The moment she said it, the world seemed to stop moving. The summer breeze that drifted across the porch suddenly felt cold. The sound of the creek, flowing behind the farmhouse, faded into silence, and as I looked into her trembling eyes, I realized something that terrified me more than the confession itself. She wasn't lying. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that may need them most. I had spent most of my life in the quiet countryside outside Lexington, Kentucky. My name was Nathan Carter, and after losing both of my parents within 3 years of each other, I inherited the family farm. The land was beautiful, but grief has a way of making even the most beautiful places feel empty. Days turned into months, and months into years. I worked from sunrise until dark, convincing myself that staying busy was the same thing as healing. It wasn't. The loneliness settled into every corner of my life. Then one spring afternoon, a young woman named Grace Walker arrived. She stood at the edge of my property, carrying an old suitcase and looking completely out of place. Her clothes were simple, her smile uncertain, and her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much disappointment for her age. She told me she was looking for work. I needed help around the farm, so I hired her. At first, she barely spoke. She worked hard, avoided personal questions, and spent most evenings sitting by the creek watching the water flow past. Yet little by little, she became part of the rhythm of the farm. She helped repair fences, planted vegetables, cared for injured animals, and somehow brought warmth back into a house that had felt abandoned for years. For the first time since my parents died, laughter returned to the dinner table. But there was always something hidden behind Grace's smile. Sometimes I would catch her staring toward the road, as if expecting someone to appear. Other times, she looked frightened when the mail arrived. There were moments when she seemed ready to tell me something important, only to change her mind at the last second. The mystery followed her everywhere. As the months passed, our friendship deepened into something neither of us expected. She became the person I looked forward to seeing every morning, and I began to suspect she felt the same. Then one evening, everything changed. A black SUV pulled into the driveway. 2 well-dressed men stepped out and headed toward the house. The moment Grace saw them, all the color drained from her face. I had never seen fear like that before. She asked me to meet her on the porch after they left. The sun was setting when she finally spoke. Tears filled her eyes as she confessed the truth she had been carrying for months. She told me she hadn't come to the farm by accident. She had been sent. Years earlier, my father had borrowed money from a wealthy businessman named Richard Vaughn during a difficult season for the farm. Unknown to me, the debt had never fully disappeared. After my father's death, Vaughn became interested in acquiring the property. When legal efforts failed, he created another plan. Grace had grown up in Vaughn's household. After her own parents passed away, though he wasn't family, he controlled nearly every aspect of her life. He offered her a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Come to the farm, earn Nathan's trust, convince him to sell, and in return, he would help her start a new life. As she spoke, shame and sorrow seemed to pour from every word. But then came the part that broke my heart. She admitted she had intended to follow his instructions at first, yet everything changed after she arrived. The kindness she found on the farm wasn't something she expected. The memories we shared became real. The friendship became real, and somewhere along the way, so did her feelings. Now Vaughn was demanding results. If she refused, she would lose the financial support she depended on and have nowhere to go. If she obeyed, she would betray the only person who had ever truly cared about her. For several long moments, neither of us spoke. The hurt was real, the betrayal was real, but so was the pain in her eyes. I realized she wasn't standing before me as someone who had deceived me. She was standing there as someone trapped by fear, someone desperate to be free, someone who hated what she had been asked to do. The next few weeks were difficult. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. There were days when old doubts resurfaced. Days when I questioned whether I could ever fully believe her again. Yet every morning, Grace continued showing up. She never asked for forgiveness. She never defended her actions. Instead, she chose honesty. One day at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time, then something remarkable happened. The community rallied around her. Neighbors who had watched her work alongside me for months saw the truth of who she was. Church members offered support. Friends helped her find opportunities independent of Vaughn's control. For the first time in her life, she wasn't facing her future alone. When Vaughn returned and threatened legal action, he discovered something he hadn't expected. The debt had already been satisfied years earlier, through arrangements my father had documented carefully. The paperwork had simply been buried among old records stored in the farmhouse attic. His leverage disappeared overnight, and with it, his control over Grace. Before we reach the ending, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when forgiveness changed a relationship forever? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with our community. The following autumn, the farm looked more beautiful than it ever had. Golden fields stretched beneath endless Kentucky skies. The creek shimmered in the afternoon sunlight, and for the first time in many years, the old farmhouse felt like a home again. Grace stayed, not because anyone told her to, not because she owed anyone anything. She stayed because she finally had the freedom to choose, and I chose her too. Years later, whenever people asked how we met, we would smile at each other, remembering the impossible beginning that nearly destroyed everything before it truly began. What started as a plan built on manipulation became a story built on honesty. What started with fear ended with trust. What started with loneliness ended with family. Sometimes life introduces people in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is not pretending to be perfect, but admitting your mistakes and choosing a better path. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of forgiveness and second chances, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone you care about, and subscribing for more uplifting stories. Your support means more than you know. As the sun set beyond the Kentucky fields that evening, Grace and I sat together on the porch listening to the creek flow quietly through the valley. The future was still uncertain, as it always is for everyone. But for the first time, neither of us was afraid, because hope had finally found its way home.